Hello, welcome to the American Business Podcast for the Next Generation. I am Kevin Deveci, your host, and I'm happy to have you at our podcast today. Today we have Will Newman with us, litigation lawyer from New York, and he has a lot of experience in the US and internationally. So we are happy to have Will today. Will, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you very much. Well, we have a lot to talk today. One of our missions at our podcast, the American Business Podcast for the Next Generation, is to share educational content with current and next generation. So I'm sure today we're going to deliver this promise, and we're going to share some educational content with our audience and our followers.
That sounds great. I'm happy to share whatever I've got.
All right, sounds good. So as a start, would you please introduce yourself to our audience and our followers of the podcast?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Will Newman. I'm a litigation attorney. So I am a lawyer that represents people and businesses in lawsuits when they sue each other or they get sued in court. And I advise people on how to avoid getting into lawsuits to begin with.
I know we have a lot to learn from you today, and I'm excited to jump to the conversation. As next steps, the studying law, learning it, and practicing it, it's not easy. And you spend years to learn it and to learn more about the craft and further it. How did you start it?
That's a good question. I really think that my education began when I was in college. I was active in the debate team, and a lot of the people around me in the debate team, they went on to become lawyers, and they were in touch with a lot of people who were lawyers. And so we found ourselves talking a lot about the law. And because a lot of them went on to law school, and because my father and grandfather were lawyers, a natural thing for me to do was to go to law school as well. While I was in law school, I studied the law. But that was a very different thing than studying to become a lawyer. The actual skill of representing clients, going to court, writing the sort of documents you file with the court, that's something I really only learned once I started working at law firms. And then I did that I'm still doing it, I guess I've been working as a lawyer for about 17 years. And over the course of doing it, you get less bad until maybe you start to become, I'd like to say, good. And that's how I learned to do what I do.
Yeah, that's very exciting. Also, I have to ask, what are the challenging parts or exciting parts of your career?
So I'm going to say there's a lot of challenging parts. Maybe to me, the most challenging part is that everyone that you are working with is looking for mistakes or problems with what you do. And so you have to be hyper aware at every moment of a way that something can go wrong, and to make sure that you are doing everything perfectly correctly, because many different people are going to be checking to look to see if there's some way that they can attack what you're doing. It could be the judge, it could be your adversary, it could be some third party, it could even be the client. There's many people that are just constantly looking for mistakes. And so you have to just be aware at all times. That's challenging. Another challenging part is that, the nature of my work is that I'm arguing with people, and that's exhausting. All the time, everyone is unhappy. And when you finally resolve something, great. Now someone else is unhappy. So that is also a difficult thing. Another difficult thing is sometimes the subject matter is boring. Many of my cases I care about deeply and find fascinating, and others I care about deeply, but are just not as exciting subject material. Maybe we're digging in deep to a very dry contract or looking at a very arcane law, and you have to become an expert in it and be able to speak about it, with some authority and, deep knowledge, because someone else thinks that, they know it better than you. And in order to, on short notice, become an expert in something that is sometimes very dry, is difficult. Sometimes also there's tight deadlines. You say, I want, a lot of time to do something, but if a client comes to you with an emergency, we're going to run out of money or they're going to shut down our business. You have to drop what you're doing and focus on something brand new. So there's a lot of challenges in the work.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely, and these are important points. Also, well, we in this podcast we share educational content and we talk about the popular subjects, and one of them is AI. Um, AI is not new, as we all know; it's been around for a long time. However, nowadays it's more accessible, more affordable, and more practical for individuals as well as businesses. So, what is your take on AI? How it's gonna change our life on daily basis, as well as businesses? Also, you can link it to your own business as well in terms of litigations and law practice too.
Lawyers have been talking about how AI will change the industry for several years now. And there's kind of a consensus that it will inevitably change the industry a lot. But for now, I think that the changes are somewhat gradual, and people are very nervous about them. So one way in which it started to change the practice is that a lot of the research that lawyers do when understanding the law and understanding the evidence is done with computers. We look at documents on the computer, and instead of going to books to read about the law, we use a lot of websites. And a lot of the software that we use to do that is incorporating AI more and more. So, whereas it used to be that a lawyer had to read every single page of documents that could potentially be useful evidence, now there's more and more people that use artificial intelligence to go through the evidence and determine what's useful and what can doesn't need to get reviewed by a person. That's been something that people have been using for a couple of years, more than 10, I think. But I think that that technology will probably get better as time goes on and people will rely on it more. But a big area that's gotten a lot of attention is legal research in terms of identifying what the law is. Right now, people use online tools to help identify what the right law is, and AI will help that process more because currently you have to know what search terms to use and read through a lot of irrelevant things before getting to the relevant ones. And AI is making that a little easier, helping to narrow down or identify the useful pieces of law to read and to separate those from the ones that are not as helpful or useful. But there's numerous examples of lawyers who are shortcutting that and just having AI do the work for them and copying and pasting AI's work into the documents they sign. And they uniformly get in a lot of trouble for doing that, in large part because the technology is not very reliable right now. And so ultimately, the things that people cite in their legal briefs aren't accurate, and they get in trouble for signing their names to things that aren't true. And so, at least for the time being, lawyers still need to do the work of reviewing the law themselves and making sure that it's accurate. So to answer your question, I think that the direction that we're going in is that AI will make the job of research and document review, which are important parts of litigation, easier. But right now, there's still a lot of work that people need to do manually, and AI hasn't taken that over yet.
Do you think in the future AI can replace lawyers?
You know, I think the answer is no, because ultimately, I think one of the services that a lawyer provides is, I want to say like comfort. I think people like knowing that there's someone that cares about the position that they're in and will work hard and make them feel a little less alone. If you're in trouble, don't worry. I'm in trouble with you. We're going to get out of this together. And as much as you can have like a user interface or some like AI chatbot to say, oh, I'm saying all the same things that Will would have said. I do think that at least for the next 100 years or so, people are going to want there to be a human being that cares about their issues and understands them and hears them out. I also
Mhm.
think that at least for now, um, the judges are going to be people. And as much as AI can do a good job of writing something, very well, ultimately, um, people will always have a better sense of what will persuade a person than I think a computer will. And I'm sure that computers are going to get very good at it, but ultimately, people are people will know people better than computers will know people. And I'm sure that maybe people that disagree with that computers know us better than we know ourselves. But I do think that there'll always be a role for people, even if they're aided in a large part by computers and AI.
Yes, that is another subject in terms of the legal requirements of using AI tool in general. So right now we are using it as a tool to support our activities, but how it's going to be in the future is remains to be seen. We don't know it yet, the legal infrastructure. So that's another subject that I think we need to consider, which we don't know anything about it yet. So it's pretty early stages, but something very important in terms of how further we're going to take AI, that it's going to affect our businesses, and it may make it better or challenging, or too different. So it remains to be seen. Um, Also, I like to, because you work with many different businesses, business people, professionals. So I like to also take your learn your take in terms of job market and economy. What is your prediction for 2025 and beyond in terms of economy and job market?
So let me start with, I guess, the job market. I think the job market will be strong. I think that we've had a pretty good job market ever since the decline of COVID. I think that there's been a robust job market, just in my experience. I think the economy will be difficult to predict. Right now, we've had kind of an inconsistent application of tariffs, and that has had a very profound effect on long-term economic planning, and it's had a very profound effect on um, the ability for companies to know what the prices of goods are going to be and what their, I guess, the long-term planning is what I meant to say. And it also has been very disruptive to a lot of businesses. And so I think that it's going to be very hard to predict either. We've actually had a very good run of the economy, I think, notwithstanding COVID, for several years. And my hope is that that continues, but it almost never does. There's always good markets and bad markets. Nothing strong lasts forever. So to ask about 2025, I think that the economy in general is going to be very difficult to predict. Also, COVID is a good example of how there are unforeseen events that can make profound impacts on the economy that are impossible or very difficult to predict, or to predict their timing. So I don't know if there's going to be an event like that, but what I do think is, even if there isn't, it would still be hard to predict the economy this year, given the uncertainty that has come from some of the current presidential administration's trade policies.
Mhm. Yes, earlier today we had another guest and we talked about tariffs and supply chain. So yeah, that part is pretty blurry. The tariffs, we need to get the latest. It looks like it's gonna be changing frequently. That's how it looks. So I think when we have more stable information and regulations, it's gonna be easier to set the strategies in terms of how to manage the supply chain and other business operations. So it looks like it's gonna be we need to stay on top of the news. That's how it looks like.
Yeah.
So at the American Business Podcast, our mission is to share educational content, right, with the next generation. And having said that, we really care about your feedback in terms of internships and apprenticeship programs. What is your take on internship programs and apprenticeship programs for next generation to prepare themselves for their career path?
I think that internships are great, but one of the things that I wish I knew back when I had internships is what to do in an internship. I think I had gone into internships with the expectation that I would get trained or that I would be doing something, right away that was, you know, um, similar to the subject matter of the internship, like it was a job that I would be learning and doing and feeling important or feeling like I was having hands-on experience. And I don't think that's what happens in a lot of internships. And I don't think I really took advantage of the real benefit of the internship. um, so I would say that the best thing that a person can do in an internship is to meet people and make connections and develop friendships or develop connections. And that's something that I was lucky to do. But if I had realized that that was the main goal of the internship, I probably would have focused on it more. Um, so I would advise people who are interested in the law to, first of all, to see if they really want to be involved in the law by doing an internship and seeing firsthand what the job is like. I think a lot of people understand what the law is like by watching television or movies. And as you can imagine, media about the law is not always incredibly accurate when it comes to depicting what the job is really like. Also, for what it's worth, there's many different types of law. A lot of people think that being a lawyer is defending a criminal defendant on death row, and that's what a very small percentage of lawyers do. And so having an internship will not only inform you about what the day-to-day practice of law can be like, but it may expose you to different types of the law to see if maybe you'd be interested in being a real estate attorney or being a trust and estates attorney or being a tax attorney or the many different types of law that one could practice. And then once there, I don't think the expectation should be that you would be writing wills or cross-examining witnesses on the witness stand, but instead to just witness and watch what it's like in the office, or to what it's like in the job, and then also to develop connections that ultimately later on, when you're looking for letters of recommendation or an idea about where to get a job, people that can help. I guess one other thing that comes to mind is when I went to law school, they teach you the law in what I thought to be a pretty abstract way. I compare it to, imagine if you were taught how to drive a car, but you've never been inside of a car before. And someone could tell you there's a steering wheel or there's a gas pedal, and here's how an engine works, and here's how they first designed a car. But some of this may not make a lot of sense to you if you've never been inside of a car. And so I went to law school and learned a lot about the rules of evidence and civil procedure. And these things seemed very abstract to me. I guess I understood them in a very, academic sense. But it wasn't until I was actually the lawyer where I go, oh, this makes so much more sense now. And I wish I had, I probably would have done better on the tests, I thought, if I knew what we were talking about. So I think a big advantage that people may have with an internship is that they can get some observation and understanding firsthand of what the job is like, so that then later on, if they choose to go to law school, I think they will have a tremendous advantage because the people that know what the practice of law is like will more easily understand the concepts that the professors and the textbooks are talking about, as opposed to people that are kind of scratching their heads and not exactly sure what it is they're being taught. So I encourage internships, but to go in knowing that the goal is not to right away be doing the thing that you want to be doing, but to develop connections with people and to just observe and get a sense of what it's like.
Yes, very important points. Also, I know you are a great networker. I witnessed it myself, and you also mentioned earlier networking with other professionals. What would you recommend or suggest to our next generation leaders and workforce to practice networking? what is to be careful about, how to practice it, some tips, if possible.
Sure. Well, first of all, I would say the best thing to do is to learn from you. You are actually one of the best networkers that I've ever
Thank you.
seen. I can only share things that are probably not as helpful as your thoughts. But I think everyone has a different style. I think some people are more introverted, and some people are more extroverted. And if you're talking about what many people do when they network is to find speaking opportunities because that gets you attention. You can come across like an authority that people will want to come to. But if you're early in your career, that may not be an option. So what I would recommend is to use networking opportunities as a way to make friends. Be friendly, introduce yourself. And one thing that I learned that I think has been helpful to me is instead of using networking opportunities as a way to directly ask for the thing you want, I'm looking for an internship, I'm looking for a job, instead to either just want to talk to people for the sake of talking, or two, to ask someone to introduce you to someone else. I think that when people ask for something directly, their immediate thought is, I don't have anything to give you. You're looking for a job? We're not hiring right now. It shuts it off right away. But if you ask for an introduction to another person, people know other people, and that feels like something that they can give. And then the other person feels like they've helped you, makes them feel good. And it also helps expand your network. And then if you just keep meeting enough people, it takes a lot of time and energy. But inevitably, you will encounter people that are eager to help you and to give you whatever it is you're looking for. I would also say, so taking the initiative also to talk to strangers, which is a hard thing to do, but I think that sometimes strangers don't want to talk to you, and it's hard not to take that personally. But you get used to not taking that personally, and keeping in touch with people. Another mistake that I've made is if you meet someone at an event, unless you're going to run into that same person over and over, it may not do any good. But when I meet people at an event, I try to exchange contact information and I send a follow-up email. It was great to meet you. Oftentimes that doesn't go anywhere, but what I try to do is to follow up with them periodically, every couple months or so. It also doesn't, always lead to something, but then later on, if you're in a position where that person may be able to help you, you're no longer just the person that they met once at an event. You're someone that has emailed with them a couple times and followed up with them. And then if you run into them a second time at an event, like they have more of a recognition of who you are. It makes it a little easier for you to, be in that person's network, have them in your network. And then if there's some way that you can help each other out to make that possible.
Yes, thank you very much for these tips. Very important for any networker, and as well as professionals. Well, it's hard to believe we almost completed 30 minutes. Before we end our episode, what are your final suggestions for the next generation for them to pick the right career as well as further in their career?
You know, I think that one thing that I regret not doing um, is to take the opportunity to try maybe a couple of different things before picking one and focusing on it. You know, I went to law school not having seriously considered other careers. And after law school, I was an elementary school teacher, and I loved being an elementary school teacher. And it occurred to me, there are so many other fields that I could have, considered. Um, I had friends that worked for banks, friends that were engineers, many different things that would have been, interesting uses of like my ambition and education. And so I guess I would recommend to people, if there is one thing that you really want to do before definitely going through with it, I don't know, take 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and just learn a lot about two or three other things. And then if you're still confident after trying a couple of different things or exploring those possibilities, that you know what you want to do, then proceed. And then also, to whatever you end up doing. Spend a couple, if it involves, going to school, getting another degree, to spend a couple of weeks actually doing the job or interning, because it is often the case that the day-to-day practice of that job may be very different than what you expect.
Well, thank you very much. It was actually very educational. Thank you for sharing your insights and your wisdom. As I said earlier, one of our missions is to share educational content with current and next generation, and I'm sure we delivered our promise today. So I truly appreciate your time, and thank you very much for joining the podcast. Also
Thank
to
you.
our appreciate it. It's a pleasure always. And to our audience and to our followers, thank you very much for following us. Please make sure to subscribe to our channel. Every Friday afternoon, we get together and we meet with experts. Knowledge is power, and let's learn from experts, just like we learned from Will Newman today. And looking forward to seeing you at our coming episodes. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.